All right. Well, I guess I should probably start tweeting things. Hey, what's up, Mighty Might? This is going to be a primer on what the hell is going on with the Los Angeles City Council and basically going through the process of what a city council agenda looks like, how people give comment, how city government in general works, and talking about some of the rules, some of the ways that those things are enforced, and just a whole bunch of general bits like that. So if you're interested in seeing how the Los Angeles city government works, stick around, ask some questions. It should be fun. I'm just sending this over to the things, and there we go. All right, so bear with me here. This is going to be probably a little bit of a rough process here, but I think we can just go ahead and get started. I don't know if anyone's going to be tuning in live right when we get started or what, but hey, it's worth a shot. Let's see. Oh, people are shouting about I'm trying to compete with the Democratic National Convention that's going on live right now, so this is definitely going to be a hard sell for members of the left here in Los Angeles, but whatever. Let's give it a shot and see what happens. So basically, we're here to talk about Los Angeles City Council meetings and what exactly they entail, what goes into them. Hey, Kalmem, I cannot say your name, but thank you. I appreciate that I win over the the possibility of staring into a whole bunch of Republicans talking to you during the Democratic National Convention, because that's basically what we're up to at this point in time, and this is depressing as shit. But let's go ahead and get into this. So basically, we're going to go through a number of different things here. We've got the city government basics, talking about reading emotion, which is actually something that I was definitely not aware of or had any fucking clue about, honestly, to be completely frank, when I first started getting involved in Los Angeles city governance and trying to pay attention to what the hell was going on. It was very confusing, so hopefully this will provide a little bit of an insight. We're going to talk about looking at an agenda and what it means, and you're gonna have to bear with me because I just realized I did not add the little viewer window that I wanted to do, but I can add that on the fly. It'll be fine, don't worry. I know how to handle technical things. We're gonna talk about a little bit about the rules of city council, the rules of public comment, and then of course how they are enforced, which it's fun. I'm actually leaning very heavily on the material that was provided to me by the extremely knowledgeable and fantastic civic watchdog Rob Kwan. You can go find him at RobKwan_ on Twitter, or more frequently you can find him on at UnrigLA, because that is what he is all about, is unrigging our municipal governance structure from the captive bonds of donations and the way that money in politics works. And completely frank, he's got a lot of really excellent insight into what is going on with all these things. And the basic, I'm planning on doing a second part of this at some point here with Rob. Scheduling got a little bit screwed up. We were going to be doing this last week, but I'm going to bring Rob on. I'm hoping for a part 2 where we can go into a little bit more in-depth response, hopefully to some questions that people have, but we'll get to that eventually when the time comes. Of course, I was just going to say that the way that everything is enforced is a little bit different now versus the material that Rob had provided to me, because Rob's material is from the before times, when we were able to meet in person and do things like give people hugs or shake their hands, or even just stand within 6 feet of each other without having to have a mask over 2/3 of our face, because it was the time before the pandemic struck and we all learned how to use Zoom like nobody's business. So anyway, let's just go ahead and dive straight into what the hell is going on here. Let's talk about the basics of how city governance works here in the city of Los Angeles. So the division of power within the city of Los Angeles is basically, it's very much akin to the way that it's divided at the state or federal level. where we have a municipal and a municipal executive branch and a municipal legislative branch. The executive branch, of course, is the mayor. He does not make the laws; he signs them, and then it is he is the one that's in charge of enforcing them through his departments. The legislative branch, in our case, is the Los Angeles City Council. We have 15 members of that city council. Well, technically, no, I guess he is still my city councilman. I live in downtown Los Angeles. My city councilman is still technically employed by the city of Los Angeles. He's not actually being paid by the city of Los Angeles anymore, but he still is an employee of the city, and he is still a sitting councilman, even though he was not too long ago sitting in jail because he was arrested by the FBI after they did a very long survey into just exactly how corrupt he is. There's been a long investigation going on. We have not seen all of the shoes drop on that, I am sure, and it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that works out. So he hasn't been doing his job for basically a long time now. I'm trying to remember exactly which week it was when Nury Martinez, the council president, sent a very nasty letter to Jose Huizar saying, we can't believe how corrupt you are. You are now forbidden from attending any meetings. Don't come to any meetings. Goodbye. And so he stopped attending any meetings. And so they basically stopped asking whether he was present or not. And it was kind of funny. So now they skip his name during the roll calls. Or a lot more than the president, depending on what day. Yes, fair enough. Yes, city council, it's wild. And then so city hall, the 15 most powerful people who work there, in my opinion, are the city council members. They are definitely more powerful individually than our mayor. And they basically are treated as mayors within their own districts. If you look at the way it's all spread out, they basically get to make the decision as to what the hell is going to happen in their district, and all of their friends on city council, because they tend to all be friends, pretty much go along with whatever the hell it is that they want to have happen in their district. There is very little pushback that we see, at least in public, from any council member as to the decisions of another city council member for what kinds of things and projects are going to move forward in their districts. That being said, the way that they actually do those things in their district is they introduce items or motions. So they introduce a motion to the city council, and then the motion is then read to the council, either as a verbal motion that they introduce themselves at the end of the meeting, or as a verbal motion that's introduced and read by the city council clerk at the end of the meeting, or I believe they're able to file them ahead of time through one process or another. I'm trying to remember exactly what they have to do, but they don't end up reading the whole thing whenever, most of the time they don't read the whole thing. Very, very rarely do they read the whole motion. They basically just get to the juicy bit and then they kind of skip forward. But every motion must be seconded. People are able to bring joint motions together. If a council member is absent, they can have somebody else read a motion in for them. It's really funny because that seems to happen fairly frequently, and it's much more entertaining because typically the person who's reading the motion in for them is the one who has seconded the motion, which is a necessary part because if somebody has not seconded a motion, it cannot be read into the council. They cannot move forward with it. You need at least one friend to back you up whenever you're doing something in city council. Otherwise, nothing happens. But it's super fun when like Mike Bond introduces a motion, but he's not there. And then David Ryu is his second. And then David Ryu is also the one who is introducing it verbally, which then means that they need to find somebody else to do the second, which is never really a problem. It's very, very rare. I mean, I've been watching a lot of these council meetings very intently for the last few months. And I don't think I've actually really seen any motions that fail to get a second from somebody else on the council. I definitely have seen amendments to motions fail to get seconds, and that's actually quite entertaining to me as somebody who is live tweeting a city council meeting to watch someone like Councilman Paul Krikorian read an amendment into a motion into the record and then get no one backing him up. More frequently, it's actually Paul Koretz that does that. And that I find quite entertaining because, frankly, fuck Paul Koretz. That guy sucks a lot. He's awful. So the way that this all works is you introduce a motion. Once the motion has been introduced, it then gets sent to the committees, whichever ones they are going to be. And then it's the determination of which committee a motion gets sent to is made by the Los Angeles City Council president, which is, in our current situation, Nury Martinez. For the last few years, it has been Herb Wesson, who is arguably one of the most powerful, I could say inarguably one of the most powerful politicians in the city of Los Angeles right now. He was council president for a long time. He is currently in a contentious runoff with Holly Mitchell to take a seat on the County Board of Supervisors, which we aren't even going to get into that, but that's like basically, it's kind of like the city council, only it's for 5 of them, and they get to make the determinations for what happens for 11 million people instead of 4 million people. So there's fewer of them. They make more momentous decisions. They deal with an even bigger budget. And they also get to argue with the sheriff all the time, which is hilarious to watch because the sheriff is an idiot. And the arguments back and forth between the sheriff and the supervisors are pretty entertaining because that man does not know how to speak into a microphone in any kind of a coherent manner or get to any goddamn points. But whatever, I digress. This is something that you'll hear me say frequently because it is a tick of mine that I have developed while doing podcasting. As I say, I digress a lot, so bear with me here. Once a motion has been sent from the council, the full council where it's introduced, off to the committees, it then receives input from key players. Typically, we'll go into who those key players are in a minute. Also, report backs from staff or council offices, departments, whatever. Getting a report into like what the hell it is. Like there was a motion that came through not too long ago from Mike Bonin asking, for a report back from the Los Angeles Police Department as to what their calls were that they were responding to. Like what was the breakdown of the calls? How were they split out between, violent versus nonviolent crime? Which ones were coming out of the department itself versus which ones were being called in. And it was a very telling little report back that he got as to what was going on. So the most frequent thing that you'll see in a motion before, like anytime that any large concept is produced or brought in front of the city council, most frequently what they're going to do is ask for a report back from either the chief analyst office or the chief legislative office, or chief legislative analyst. I apologize. We'll get into the acronyms here. There's lots of acronyms. For a report back into like what the feasibility is, what the underlying statistics are to back up the claims that have been used to produce the flowery language that's at the top of the motions. We'll go into all of that a little bit too. Regardless, the report back comes back. The committee hears the report. They ask a bunch of questions. This is when you see city staffers from various departments coming forward and providing the report and a summary and then answering any questions that the council members might have. The council members who are present are pretty much exclusively the members of that committee. I don't think I've actually ever seen anyone brought in from outside of a committee to participate in that process. I would have to ask Rob as to whether or not this is a thing that they can do. But once the report has been generated, people come to the committee to then answer the questions that the council members have about the reports. And then they move forward with whatever the result is, either sending it back for more reports, or it gets voted out of the committee, assuming that the committee decides to hear it. This is famously something that Gil Cedillo, who is the chairman of the Housing Committee, he has his quirks about who it is that he likes to work with and who he doesn't like to work with. And frankly, if he doesn't like to work with you, he just won't move forward with any of the motions that you're in. This is exactly the same kind of thing that we saw out of my city councilman, Jose Huizar, who sat as the chair of the Planning and Land Use Committee, which is frankly the most powerful committee that we have in city council. because they get to make determinations as to what goes on with zoning and making decisions about making variances. A variance is basically saying like, hey, the code says you can't build the thing that you're trying to build, but we can give you, you give us a little bit of this, we'll give you a little bit of that, and that creates a variance in the code and gives them an exception to saying like a floor area ratio, saying that they can build something that's going to be taller than what the city council's, or not the city council, the building code would typically allow for that specific location. This is allegedly how it is that my city councilman managed to secure massive donations to his, I guess, Apple box full of cash is the best way of describing it, amongst other things, including his wife taking in a whole bunch of donations at the high school that she worked at, which is the same high school that he used to go to. It's a private high school. Anyway, I digress, as I said I would. And so once the committee has heard the report back, has scheduled the report back and brought everybody in and asked the questions, back and forth, they then take a vote as to whether or not to approve the motion or reject it. And once it's been approved from that committee, which most of them are, then it goes back to the full council for a vote. Typically that would be for a 15-member vote, but because, again, my city councilman is an allegedly massively corrupt piece of shit, we currently only have 14 members that are voting. We will see how long it is that keeps going. There is a hard out on that 14-member count. Come December, when Kevin De Leon will be sworn in as the member to represent the 14th council district. Yes, allegedly. Allegedly. Yes, very much allegedly. Come the end of the year, Huizar will be out, regardless of what happens with the courts. And it looks like it's going to take a while before all of that runs its process through. But then we will finally have 15 members again. And then once they vote, and they almost always vote in lockstep, it's something like 99+% of the time they all vote to approve things that come forward. There is a little bit of horse trading that may or may not happen. They are able to make amendments during the reading of the motion once it's come out of committee and before they're voting. Of course, they do have the capacity to kind of circumvent the process of going to, not kind of, they can literally circumvent the process of going to a committee, which is, hopefully I'm going to remember this correctly, Rule 16. So if they invoke Rule 16 when they introduce a motion, it can then skip the committee altogether, skip the report back, and just go straight to being heard. This is what happened with Monica Rodriguez not too long ago, where right before they all went on break for the entire month of July, she tried to work a motion into the process. She tried to make it as an emergency motion that would allow her to, or no, she tried to make it as I guess it was an amendment to an existing motion, to bring in $350,000 of funding from a national police league, to do a study, to conduct their own quote unquote independent study, into the use of force by the Los Angeles Police Department during the uprisings during the uprising that was going on at the end of May and the beginning of June, throughout the month of June, basically, here in the city of Los Angeles. And so the cops came to her with an offer to fund a study, and she tried to get that funding through the council and onto the record so that we could have the cops paying for their own study, independent of this study that was being introduced by Marqueece Harris Dawson and the other seconding and supporting council members on that motion. Monica Rodriguez tried to offer it up as an amendment. Marqueece had a specialist come in and give testimony as to how that was fucked up and was not in any way appropriate to be having the police providing that independent study into the use of force violations, because what the fuck? So it didn't happen, and he shut it down real quick. She then tried to change it to be its own motion, for it to be an emergency motion. That got shut down. And then they ended up letting her introduce it it was literally the last meeting before they went on break. And she was then able to introduce it as a special item 16 motion, Rule 16 motion, I apologize. Rule 16 means that it gets to skip the subcommittee, so it didn't have to go to a committee and get a report back and all that other jazz. She just got to read it straight in and have them make a vote on it. And of course they did vote, and they took the money, because why would they not? But at least it didn't get tied in with the original independent one. So everything is fucking wild. Whatever. This is what we needed. It's not what we're getting. God damn it. Anyway, once it's signed, or rather, once it has been voted on by the 15-member council, soon to be again 15-member council, it then goes off to the mayor for his signature. I am not aware of anything that he has chosen not to sign in his term. Thank you, Garcetti, for doing your job. And yeah, so whatever. He sucks. Let's go through this. The council president is one of the key players in all of this, obviously. That is Nury Martinez. We also have the CLA, which is the chief legislative analyst, the CAO, the chief administrative officer. Sorry, I missaid that one. I misspoke earlier and called him the chief analyst office, which is incorrect. It's the chief administrative officer. I can speak, I promise. We also have the city controller and the city attorney. If you have tuned into city council meetings, you are probably most familiar with the city council president and the city attorney. You're not actually familiar with the city attorney himself, because his name is Mike Fuhrer and he is not present. However, there is a deputy city attorney. His name is Stefan Faubel. He is the one that shouts at you to get back on topic, tells you that you're not on topic, and then hangs up on you. That is Stefan Faubel. That is his job. That's what he does. The other person who shouts at you to get back on topic is Nury Martinez. She is the city council president. This is exactly the same job that Herb Wesson used to do. It's just that when Herb Wesson did it, it was in front of people in a live space, instead of it being all done over the phone. We besties. Oh, I presume that you are familiar, Calmemxt Zippy. I'm butchering that name. But yeah, I'm sure if you have given comment, you have very, very likely engaged and interacted with either the council president, Nury Martinez, or the city attorney's deputy, Stefan Faubel, during one of these public comment sessions, because they're the ones that enforce the rules. Of course, when the buzzer goes off, they just mute you and hang up half the time. If they're feeling generous and you're being civil and nice, they might let you continue to make your point as long as they think you're wrapping it up. It's weird. They're really bad at enforcing the rules consistently, or like just even at all. It's wild what they get away with in all of this. But getting back to it, so we'll just go from the top. So the city council president has nearly supreme power with the ability to control what happens in what things get onto the agenda and what things go on in the meeting. They basically, if you are a city councilman or councilwoman who is on the outs with the council president, your motions just might not get scheduled for a long while. And you really need to be in their good graces, because they have the control over setting what the schedule is. This really didn't matter that much during Herb Wesson's time, because Herb Wesson is very much a consummate politician who doesn't really hold any grudges, as far as I can tell. Nury Martinez, on the other hand, does seem to hold a grudge and does seem to get very mad whenever anyone questions her leadership or her decision-making process, and gets very snippy with them. This definitely happened when David Ryu made some kind of a little snide comment about how a bunch of meetings were canceled during March at the beginning of the pandemic, because they were. A bunch of meetings were canceled. All the committee meetings were canceled, and Nury Martinez tried to cancel 2 weeks worth of general city council meetings in a row, with the offering of saying, we're having technical difficulties. And they weren't able to get their IT shit straightened out. So therefore she said, well, we're going to have to take 2 weeks to figure this out, which is frankly bullshit. You can cancel 1 week of meetings and say you aren't going to get it done that week, but canceling 2 weeks in a row is just like completely unacceptable. You can just cancel them as they're about to happen. You don't need to cancel them 2 weeks out and just be like, fuck it, we're not having any meetings. Yeah, so when David Ryu made some kind of a comment about that later on in the summer, Nury jumped right down his throat about it and got extremely defensive about not having canceled any meetings in her terms, which was wrong because she did. She canceled a bunch of meetings. They still, to this day, are not doing Friday meetings, and all of those Friday meetings were canceled at the beginning of the pandemic. For a long while, all the Wednesday meetings were also canceled. We were down to one meeting a week, which was pretty fucking ridiculous for a city council this powerful with this many people. Frankly, the city of Los Angeles represents 4 million people. That's bigger than a whole bunch of states. And they are the only governing body that we have. And they just were not doing their fucking job. To be fair, nobody really knew how they could do their job, but they certainly could have been doing a lot more than what they were doing. They could have absolutely done a lot more to protect tenants and give a lot of people a lot more peace of mind and decrease their stress while we're confronting, a global pandemic. And instead, they left everybody up, high and dry with no real offerings of any protection or any meaningful resolve as to them, providing any kind of a sense of security that they actually, had a firm hand on the tiller of the ship of the Los Angeles government. So, thanks, Nuri. So you could argue that the council president is actually more powerful than the mayor. Some would. I would not argue with them. Again, like I said, Herb Wesson was the council president for many years, and I would argue that he was absolutely more powerful than Garcetti. And yeah, so, here we go. This is one of the fun ones. Thank you, Rob, for your notes. One other thing that the city council president can do is they have the discretion as to determining whether or not public comment will be allowed for an item that has already been heard in a committee. Technically, if an item is heard in a committee, it can have its public comment requirement satisfied during that committee hearing, which means that when it comes back to the council for a vote, it can be categorized as not requiring public comment anymore. They can say that it has already had its public comment requirement met under the Brown Act, and then they can actually vote for it. So basically, if it's on the agenda, they can choose, and they have started to do this now. They can choose to vote for it before they open up the phone lines for public comment. So that's why you will see sometimes on the agenda a number of items where it'll say like this item has been held for public comment, or public comment has already been met for this item. They will sometimes decide to vote on those items before they open up the phone lines, which then means that no one gets to make any public comment on it because it's done. It's been voted on. It's been moved forward. And then sometimes they screw up, but very, very infrequently. Anyway, the next person down the line, I'm going into way more detail. And if I'm, not going fast enough, just type something in the comments and say, hurry up, or I don't know, yell at me or something. The next down the line is the CLA, the Chief Legislative Analyst. They are the ones who are answering questions from the council. They do research into proposed policy changes that are coming out of these motions. And they look like the kind of, like the committee staff that you would see in a congressional hearing. So they're the ones that go and they do they're the wonks. They're the ones that go out and do the research, figure out what the hell the implications of the motion are going to be. They present the alternative information, they compare the proposed legislation to what it is that other cities do, if that is something that they have been asked to do. And then they answer all the questions, and they basically get grilled by the council whenever a motion is being brought forward to vote. And the next one is the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer. They respond to the mayor. They respond to the city controller. It's an elected official. Oh, sorry, no. I'm jumping through the notes. My apologies. The Chief Administrative Officer responds to the mayor. They are used during the process of the report backs. They don't often come in for questions, though I think I have seen them brought in for answering questions of the council every once in a while. Very much the same kind of a mechanism as the Chief Legislative Analyst, but they're more about talking about the functions of what city government is doing. Of course, the next one is the city controller, which is an elected official. Their job is ensuring transparency in the finances of the city, protecting fiscal responsibility, yada, yada, yada. That's the money person. The city attorney is also an elected official, but they have a rule of confidentiality with all city and city government officials, which means that they can speak with the council in closed session about things that are going on. They're the ones that prepare the council's defense during whenever somebody sues the city, and that happens a lot. The city is constantly being sued, and the city attorney is the one that defends the city or is bringing the lawsuit on behalf of the city through the courts. And if I make a mistake on any of the technical stuff of this, I apologize. I'm novice to this, and just trying to share as much knowledge as I have as possible, and I probably will make a few mistakes, so I apologize. Yes, so one of the things that's worth noting about the city attorney is that unless what they're saying is written down in an official document, their legal opinions are considered to be privileged information. So that's information that we, the public, will never get access to. It's fun. That's just how it works. And so the city attorney, currently Mike Fuhrer, is the guy with mustache. You might have seen stuff popping up about him running for mayor. He is very ambitious. He is very conservative. He has no chance in hell of becoming mayor, in my opinion. Kay Schaff, is that all cities or just Los Angeles? I'm just talking about the city of Los Angeles. Our government is set up by the charter of the city of Los Angeles. I do not have a good sense of how our city government operates in comparison to other city governments across the state or the country. I do know that in other cities, like in Chicago, they have significantly more aldermen, and the aldermen are the ones who are effectively the equivalent of the city council members. And there's just lots more of them for a city that is smaller than the city of Los Angeles. And the power is more spread out, and they've got a much closer connection to their constituents. There's a whole bunch of technical stuff that gets really into the weeds about the differences between the way that the city governments are structured, and I really do not have time to go into it. I'm also not in any way an expert on it, so I'm not going to step into that landmine. Let's just go ahead and go on to the next step in here. So, 50 in Chicago, 51 in New York. Thank you, Alex Mack. We got 15 here in the city of LA, so it's not great. All right, a couple of key things that you're going to want to know about how the city of Los Angeles works. The Brown Act. It is a state law, but it only applies to local government. So it's basically about how the city, the county, district boards, commissions, etc., all function. This also applies to your neighborhood council. It requires that they have open meetings. It requires that the agenda for any meeting be posted 72 hours in advance, except a couple of times in cases of emergencies. For instance, when the FBI decides to arrest a city councilman, then they can change the agenda in less than 72 hours. They can pass a Rule 23 motion, which means that they do a special process and skip the whole 72-hour minimum requirement for getting something on the agenda. It's real fun. The Brown Act also requires the opportunity for public comment to be heard on any of the things on the agenda, and it cannot require registration or identification for the meeting, which is why you get to see some of the fun stuff with who signs up for giving public comment at some of these committee hearings. They will often ask you for your name. Sorry, I'm just turning on a couple of the lights here really quick because it's getting dark. Hit the button. They will ask you for your name when you're signing up to give public comment. They'll ask you for any organizations that you represent. If you are a lobbyist, you must disclose that by checking the little box, blah, 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 if you're a paid speaker. But if you're just a member of the public and you want to give public comment on an item, you're more than able to do that, and you don't actually have to tell them who you are. If you don't tell them who you are, you won't get called, so you have to give them some kind of a name, but it doesn't have to be your real one, and that definitely happens. That's why we also get to have the fun things with like Herman Herman and Wayne Spindler or Wayne from Encino. You can go into some of the details of that stuff a little bit later. Anyway, they can't require registration or identification for the meetings, and it allows for the public to be able to participate. That is, the Brown Act is why we get the public comment that we do. The bare minimum that is required at these city council meetings is 30 minutes of public comment. And if you've noticed recently, ever since they came back from their vacation in July, that has been exactly how much we get. I don't think we've had more than 30 or 40 minutes of public comment at any of the general city council meetings that have happened this month. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Basically, it's Nury Martinez's way of saying fuck you to the public, because a lot of people were saying fuck you to Nury, and she doesn't like that. So she's mad at us, and so she's curtailing a public comment period because that's well within the rules and her rights as the city council president. So, or her authority rather. It sucks. It's really disappointing to see that the public has been locked out of participating in the city government's process. Yeah, such is life. The city charter. Let's see. So the way that the city charter is set up, it's a unique city charter for the city of Los Angeles. We have 3 general council meetings a week, in theory. We currently do not, because we are in a state of emergency thanks to the pandemic. We are down to 2 meetings, which is still better than what we were doing for a while, where we were doing 1 meeting a week. The Friday meetings have not yet come back. Once the Friday meetings do come back, which the Friday meetings were never really that productive, but the bulk of the city council agenda, the work of the city council itself, is done on the Tuesday, Wednesday schedule that they've really kind of settled into at this point. Friday's normally not that big of a day, but since the pandemic, Fridays aren't a thing at all. The one exception I can think of is when K-Town for All launched a petition to collect signatures demanding that the city council president resign for canceling a whole bunch of meetings. And then in response to public outcry, she scheduled an emergency meeting on a Friday, which was fun. That was, I believe, the first of these Zoom meetings, and was an amazing experience. Definitely set the tone for what city council meetings were going to be like in the Zoom era, as it were. Fun times. There was apparently a bit of pornography that was shown to the public comment section. Everyone who was logged in through Zoom, that was before they decided that people weren't going to be able to log in through Zoom to give public comment, and make it instead so you have to call in. And then, they changed it more later to make it so you had to enter another number once you got through to say that you wanted to speak, which is really kind of asinine, because if you've already called the number that is about joining the meeting to give public comment, that's not the meeting that you would join to listen to them. There's a separate number for calling in and just listening. So whatever. The rules are dumb, and they don't make any sense most of the time, or they are a stretch beyond what is necessary. It doesn't matter. They are imposed upon us, and we must work within them because we are not the ones in power. The way that city council operates is that as a city councilman or woman or person, you are a full-time employee of the city. This is not the way it used to work for the city of Chicago. I'm not sure if it's the way it still works, but being an alderman didn't pay that well, and it was not your full-time job. City council here in Los Angeles, because of the way that everything works out, it is your full-time job, and you get paid very, very well for it. You get paid almost $200,000 a year. Actually, I think it's now in excess of $200,000 a year. It's crazy. They get paid a lot of money. They get paid more than councilmen. Congress people. So if you're a congressional rep, in the United States Congress, you get paid less than a city councilman, city councilwoman, or city council person here in the city of Los Angeles. Fun stuff. The districts are huge. We're talking 260,000 people per district. They typically have a very large staff for each council, 1 to 3 field offices per council district. The Prop 5, the members of the city council can veto but not rewrite commission decisions. And they typically act with a consensus mentality. They definitely do not often vote outside of their 13-0, 14-0, 15-0, 12-0, whatever it is, lockstep that they get themselves into. It's very rare, but it does sometimes happen that you see things go down in like an 8-7 vote. Or actually, no, you haven't seen anything go down in an 8-7 vote in a while. You've seen things go down in like a 7-6 vote. It's weird. Just dive in and have fun with it. The commissions are very much empowered. We have a weak mayor here in the city of Los Angeles is a technical term for it. That's not to say that the mayor can't do anything, because the mayor certainly can do a lot of things. The mayor, for instance, during the pandemic, has the authority within his rights to forestall all evictions in the city of Los Angeles, and he's pretty much passed the buck on that one to the county and to the state and to the federal government. He also has the authority to commandeer hotel rooms and set them up as emergency shelters for unhoused individuals who are at an increased risk of COVID-19 infection. And he hasn't done shit all about that either. Instead, he just, again, passes the buck and just doesn't do his job because he's really bad at it. Commissions in this aspect are like there are various commissions throughout the city government, and I'm drawing a blank right now. Thank you for asking, Annie. We have commissions set up for studying things, and they are employed with commissioners. There's the way that they I'm really drawing a blank on how to describe this. They don't have that much authority. For instance, the board of commissioners for I take it back. They have a lot of authority. The LADWP, for instance, has a board of commissioners, so it's something similar to that. That's a bit of a bad analogy, because I believe the LADWP is a city-county special thing. Maybe it is just a municipal city of Los Angeles. But anyway, there's a board of commissioners there at work. They do that job. I believe that they get paid pretty well for that job, but I don't think it's necessarily a full-time job. But they get to make their own decisions about how the thing that they are commissioning, they are the commissioners of, works. The Port of Los Angeles has its own commission as well. They get to make decisions on what happens with the Port of Los Angeles. The city council does not get to control that. However, if the board of commissioners for the Port of Los Angeles makes a decision that the city council doesn't work, this is something that happened with the ILWU last summer. Mike Bonin and Joe Buscaino, who frankly do not see eye to eye on many things these days, did see eye to eye on this. It was a labor dispute surrounding automation at, I believe it was the China shipping terminal. The details in my mind are a little bit hazy because this was well over a year ago, and oh my God, an entire fucking lifetime's worth of events have happened in that time since then. But at that point in time, the board of commissioners for the port was making a decision, and I believe the city council decided to reject it. They made the decision to veto the commission's decision, which they can do, and that is within their right. It sends it back, and the commission has to rework whatever they're doing. But the city council can't just rewrite it and shove it back in their face. They have to veto it and send it back to the commission. The commission reworks it and sends it back to them. Yay, distribution of power. What else is there here? Oh, term limits. Yeah, so you can't be on the council forever, unlike being a member of Congress. Nancy Pelosi. What? You can be elected, I believe it's 3 terms. It's okay. So yes, I believe it is 3 terms. Let me double check on that really quick. How long can you be? city council. Hey, Wikipedia. I believe how many terms? 4-year terms. I'm trying to remember how they're going to get termed out. So they get termed out eventually. I believe that. Let me find Huizar. I can tell when he got elected, and I can do the math backwards. But yeah, I believe it's 3 terms. It's fun because all of the people who are on council right now got a special term because they all while they were in office, the city council changed which year elections were happening, and so they synchronized everything up with the even year cycle. That is where congressional and state elections and the presidential elections all happen, because they realized that voter turnout for these elections was shit. So the last time that City Councilman Jose Huizar was elected was 2015 for a 5-year term that he is currently finishing out, even though he has been suspended from the council. All of the other council members, it's the same kind of a thing, but they cycle it so that it's if you're in the even districts, you're in this year, and if you're in the odd districts, you're 2 years later, and then that way half of the council roughly can be changed at any given election. And it allows for some level of continuity between from council to council. And so this year, the even council districts are up for election. In 2022, the odd districts are up for election. So if, for instance, I don't know, happen to live in the district that is represented by Mitch O'Farrell, that would be the 13th district, which is, Hollywood, Echo Park, Silver Lake, that kind of general area, chunks of Koreatown. You guys get to have an election coming up in 2022, and it's going to be a fun one because lots of us really do not like Mitch O'Farrell. But yes, so there are term limits. I believe it is 3 terms. I am trying to... yes, so Huizar won his seat. He won a special one in 2005, then he won in 2007, then he won again in 2011, then he got another one in 2015. So apparently if you're running for a short term, you get extra time. But he's been in this shit forever. He's been in there for 15 years now, which was plenty of time for him to establish what he thought was going to be a dynasty that would last forever. And instead he's getting locked up. And he has apparently really, his wife stuck with him through a lot of shit, with the promise that she was going to be the next person to represent the 14th council district, and that ain't happening. Kevin De Leon is. Hey. So back on target here. They have term limits. It is typically the way that the elections typically work is that the chief of staff for whoever is in the council right now typically comes up and replaces the sitting council person when they term out. The council people typically will then move on from their position to something else. They almost never just disappear from life. From elected office. These people are typically hopping around, either staff or elected officials, jumping back and forth. For instance, again, my soon-to-be city councilman is Kevin De Leon. He was, up until 2018, the president pro tem of the California State Senate, arguably one of the most powerful legislators in the state of California. He then tried to challenge Dianne Feinstein for her U.S. Senate seat. He did not win. And then for 2 years, he kind of just was mulling around while he decided to run for city council. When he decided to run for council, he became the clear favorite, and he ended up winning more than 50% of the vote, which means he doesn't have to even do a runoff election in November. He just gets to take the seat. And apparently he is, I'm imagining he is very eager to get that seat, especially now that the current person in that seat has been suspended and isn't doing the job. And that means I don't have any kind of representation on the city council. Good times. The last time that somebody successfully defeated, I can speak, I promise, an incumbent on the city council was 18 years ago. Actually, I think it was longer than that now. It was Antonio Villaraigosa. Only one challenger since Villaraigosa has managed to force a runoff against an incumbent up until Nithya Raman. And that was against Gil Cedillo in the first city council district. Joe Barry Ali flamed out real hard after managing to just barely force a runoff. But Nithya Raman is forcing a very much a strong runoff, and David Ryu is scared shitless. It's great. No, Cal Memmott, he does not. Jose Huizar has stopped collecting his salary. Forget if it was Ron Galperin, who is the city controller. I think it was Ron Galperin. Send out a memo like a day after Huizar was arrested by the FBI, being like, nope, I am the paymaster, and stopped the paychecks. Yeah, Annie, Joe Bray Ali. Oh, what a character. What a piece of shit. So yeah, Nithya is going to be setting records here in the city of Los Angeles when she defeats David Ryu, because that's going to happen, and I'm doing everything I can, and you should too, to make sure that that does happen, because she's much better at this. Let's get into the nitty gritty now that we have done 53 minutes of me just yammering on about how city government works without actually getting into the details of what happens in a city council meeting. So this is going to be a long session. I hope that y'all are down for a, grab a beverage, sit back, pull up a chair next to the fire. No, don't pull up a chair next to the fire. It's fucking hot out. Grab a beer, grab a drink, whatever, something cold, preferably, I'm sure, and buckle up. Let's get busy with it. Motions. This is what these city council motions look like once they have been scanned in. I do not know why there are fingerprints at the top of this motion. It's not that they were fingerprinting whoever it was who handed it to them. I'm assuming it was just a smudged ink situation, but we got fingerprints. They're on record. You can actually look this one up. The link there at the bottom. This is Council File 12-0398-S2. I just pulled it up a little while before this got started. This is something that's going to be discussed in the meeting tomorrow. You'll notice that the motion is pretty, it's got its thing going on. There's a bunch of text at the top, and then about halfway down the page, there is a big, bold, all caps line that says, I therefore move. And if you look at the way that this is all structured, there's the first part and there's the second part. The first part sets, basically it's a preamble that's full of all of the contextualization for making the justification of why this city council person is doing whatever this city council person is doing in the motion that they are introducing. It is the opportunity for the city council person and or their staff to use flowery language to lay out the scope and severity and necessity of, like, the severity of the problem, the necessity of taking immediate, bold, consequential action, or in many cases, not. But it's like, it just basically is it's the context for whatever the hell it is that they're planning to do after that red line. So below the red line is the second part of the motion, which is the I therefore move part, which looks more like this. So it's I therefore move that the city engineer be instructed to report with recommendations on extending the temporary closure of the 3 walkways northeasterly of Sharp Avenue between San Fernando Mission Boulevard and McNeil Street in Mission Hills for an additional 18 months for public safety reasons. I further move that the city engineering be instructed to modify the conditions requiring the physical closure of the 3 walkways by removing the 6-month time requirement. So basically, this is the juicy bit where they get the instructions for either the CIO, the CLA, or department staff to do the thing, right? This is the actual portion of the motion that matters as far as what's going to happen, is this bottom part that's the I therefore move. And there can be lots of further move clauses. Like, it can get stacked up pretty good. I think that the one that's being considered right now for how, reimagining public safety is going to work in the city of Los Angeles. It was a motion that was introduced by Nuri Martinez, Herb Wesson, and like 6 other council members. And I believe it was seconded by Mitch O'Farrell, but it was like half of the council was on the damn motion. That one had like 4 or 5 moving clauses. So super fun, because it's just like, boom, 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 all of the clauses stacked up inside of it. But as the notes from Rob say, the language that actually matters is below the line. That's where you see the I therefore move motion, or therefore be it resolved, which is for resolutions. That's the other thing that they can introduce. We haven't seen very many resolutions lately, because they're trying to do their job with motions instead. They can have a bunch of stuff in that section, which is what I was talking about, the moving clauses. The motions and resolutions themselves, this thing right here can very much, very widely in structure and the length. The promising language that you see in part 1 shouldn't be fooling you. It doesn't. Whatever they say in part 1 is really not the part that matters. What matters is the part that's in the second half of the motion. That's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to a motion in city council. It tells you what actions are going to be taken, who it is that is going to be taking those actions, and toward what end, and also lays out the time frame of it. Most of the time, they will require a 30 or a 60-day report back period, whatever the hell it's going to be. At the top of the motion here, let's see, can we go back? Yeah. You see that it says Public Works and Gang Reduction. That's the committee that this motion has been referred to. So if you go all the way back to the beginning of this, where we're talking about how motions go through their process, once it's been read in at the full council, it then is sent by the council president under their authority to whichever committee is most relevant to it. Fun story with that. Mike Bonin, when he introduced the motion, he was one of the co-movers on the motion alongside Marquise Harris Dawson and Herb Wesson and Curran Price on a motion to remove the LAPD from all traffic enforcement related activities. When they introduced that motion, the intention was that it was going to go through the through the Transportation Committee, which is the committee that Mike Bonin chairs. Instead, it ended up being referred to the Police Ad Hoc Committee that meets far less frequently. In fact, I believe it met once before they went on break in July for an entire year. It had been more than a year since this particular ad hoc committee had met. So therefore, moving it to that committee is not a very good way to make sure that things continue to move forward as far as legislation is concerned. The council president has it very much within her authority to duly refer, which just means it goes to both committees simultaneously, and either one of them are able to move it forward so that it can then come back to the full council for a vote. She didn't do that, probably because I don't think she gets along very well with Mike Bonin. So yeah, that motion's kind of stalled out right now, and it's waiting on Herb Wesson to hold a police ad hoc committee hearing so that they can move forward with it. And I hope that they do that soon, because this is a really fucking big deal. If we're going to talk about defunding the police, removing them from the job of enforcing traffic rules, which they really fucking shouldn't do, because that is the number one excuse that they use, one of the top excuses that they use. I misspoke. One of the top excuses, if not the most frequent excuse that they use for any kind of an altercation with typically young black men that results in their deaths. It's typically a traffic stop. Removing the police from that portion of law enforcement would be fantastic. So this motion really needs to keep moving forward, but it is stuck in the ad hoc committee instead of going off to the Transportation Committee. But I digress. At the bottom of the motion, you get to see who it is that introduced the motion. That, in this case, is Monica Rodriguez. And then you can see that it is seconded by Bob Blumenfeld. Typically, the motion is oftentimes introduced by whoever it is that runs the committee that it's going to end up going to. Not always, but it does seem to be the case often. The bottom, the individual who introduces a motion gets priority in speaking on the motion during the debate that they have during the council meetings. They can offer written or oral testimony at committees that they are not on. So, for instance, if you introduce a motion but you're not, so if let's see, if Monica, oh no, I think she's actually on it. Let's say that Curran Price, I'm pretty sure Curran Price is not on the Homelessness and Poverty Committee. If Curran Price were to introduce a motion relating to homelessness, he would be given the opportunity to come and give written or oral testimony at the Homelessness and Poverty Subcommittee, or committee rather, when his motion was being heard. So you don't have to be a member of the committee in order to be a participant in that process. You just don't get to vote on it unless you're on that committee. This is, I can literally just talk about this shit for literally hours, apparently, because it's already been one. We're not even close. Let's talk a little bit about the agenda. And then I think I'm going to try to set up a thing so we can actually dive through an agenda and look at it a little bit and get a good sense of it. And then I think I'll probably wrap this all up at about 8:30, so I'm not taking everybody's entire evening here, because I'm sure you all have other things to do, like go watch Joe Biden flailing around on a pedestal someplace, or a bunch of Republicans speaking to the Democratic National Convention, because of course, why the fuck would we not be having Republicans speaking to the Democratic National Convention? Shit. Anyway, getting on to what goes on in an agenda. You can find these online. I'll post this somewhere. I don't know where I'm going to post it. I'll post it somewhere. You can get the meeting agenda through the city clerk's website. There are a couple of different places. Hey, cheers. There are a couple of places. I apologize. I know that the comments come through like way late from Twitch, so it's got a couple of seconds delay, and I really can't do anything about that, so I'm sorry. Thank you, Restream. Anyway, the way that the agendas get posted, again, thanks to the Brown Act, they must be posted at least 72 hours in advance. If you just Google Los Angeles City Council agenda, you're most likely going to find the calendar, which not the most useful thing in the world, but it does list all of the different committee hearings that are going to be happening, as well as the full council meetings that are going to be happening. And you're able to click on the agenda and look and see what's going on. The meeting information that's presented up at the top of the meeting is, it says what is going on. And in this instance, I've got the agenda for an actual full city council meeting. This is the one for tomorrow. This is, it says starts at 10 a.m. It's going to be at the John Ferraro Council Chamber, which is room 340 at City Hall, 200 North Spring Street. And there will be people in the John Ferraro Council Chamber, which is room 340 at City Hall. It just will be like 5 of them, maybe 6 or 7. I don't keep track of it anymore. It will be the city clerk. It will be Nury Martinez. The city council president. It will be Stefan Faubel, and like 3 other staffers, and that's about it. And then the rest of us get to call in remotely. And then all of the city council members that will be present in the meetings will be calling in through Zoom, because we live in the time of pandemic and we can't all be in the same room at the same time. The public comment information is always included on these agendas. It has changed from week to week, so it's always useful to go back and brush up on exactly what number you need to be punching into the phone to give public comment. The big thing that changed recently was that they added the once you call in, you must hit *9 in order to actually speak. If you don't hit *9, you will not be entered into the queue. And up until the point where you do hit *9, you are not in the queue. You are just hanging out in limbo. So yeah, they added that for, I don't know what reason, but they decided maybe it was something to do with the technical system that they're using for conferencing in these calls. You then get placed in a waiting room, and you may or may not be hearing all of the other people who are in there. They've had glitches in the past where you did get to hear all of the rest of the people in the lobby, and it was not great, because there are a couple of members of the public who do give comment on a very regular basis, who say some extremely offensive things. And when they're shouting that at elected officials, that's one thing, but if they're shouting at a number of members of the public who are trying to give public comment and are dutifully following the instructions that they've been given to participate, it has definitely been something that's turned people off from wanting to participate. So yeah, that's a thing that happens. You also get to see who it is that's going to be conducting the meeting. In this case, it will be Nury Martinez, and it tells you what district she's from. It's the 6th. President pro tem is Joe Buscaino. That means that when Nury disappears from the dais, which does happen from time to time, Joe takes over remotely and fails to follow the rules that she has established for things like the Port of LA discussion that happened last week. They said they were going to be having 50-50 testimony spread between people who support versus people who oppose the motion to, deny an appeal of a decision relating to the California Environmental Quality Act. They were supposed to give equal 10 pro and 10 against speaking time of 1 minute apiece, and they just threw all of that out the window and gave about 3 minutes to people who were in support of the appeal, and about 17 minutes or so, 15 minutes or so, to the people who were against the appeal and wanted to deny it and have it sent back. And Joe Buscaino, who was acting as the one running the meeting for about half of those public comments, was arguing against the appeal. So it was pretty fucked up to see him using his authority to basically throw out all of the rules that Nury Martinez claimed that she was going to be enforcing, but then opted not to do a goddamn thing about. Where can we go to find the kind of summary of agenda items that PBLA had weekly updates on in June/July? There isn't any place right now that offers you an agenda summary. Those agenda summaries were being put together by people from People City Council or by people from K-Town for All in advance of, it was a coordinated effort by organizers and activists to inform the public as to what the hell was going on. The city does not provide any of that information. They give you the agenda, and it is up to you, the individual, to know what the hell is going on. Or you can rely on organizers like those of us at Ground Game LA, the people who are, also those of us at NOC, and our allies over at K-Town for All and at People City Council and other organizations who do the very, very good work of diving through the agenda and looking at things and trying to figure out which of these things are going to be contentious, what's the background information that we need to be providing to people, and then trying to compile that into a collected source. That kind of information was something that people were really getting a lot more of put together earlier on in the pandemic, when more people were, totally unemployed, before everything had really kind of settled into the current new normal, as it were. And so there were a lot more folks who have, for instance, legal backgrounds or just had more time on their hands and were able to comb through an agenda, during that 72-hour window, find the highlights that they think are going to be important and put them together on a web page, either through the People City Council or through K-Town for All, and provide that information for you. I do my best to provide that information at the top of my tweet threads that I do for the live tweeting of these city council meetings, but I am not great at figuring that out ahead of time. I must admit, I do not have the time to go through the entire agenda and figure out what the hell they're going to be doing the entire time. I try to do so, but I don't always have the time to do it. It frankly feels like some of the city council members also don't have time to do it because they really don't seem to really necessarily know what's going on for their meetings all the time. But it's those kind of summaries, that's purely the blood, sweat, and tears of organizers and activists providing that information. And they do it on almost entirely a volunteer basis. So it's entirely up to them to provide that information. And if you want to help, get involved. So reach out to People City Council, reach out to K-Town for All, reach out to us here at Ground Game, and NOC. And, we'll plug you in, get you set up, and show you all the links and places you need to dive into for information and connect you with all the resources that you need to come up with that kind of a summary. It is also just an experiential thing of you need to have that familiarity with what these kinds of relationships are on the council. Like, for instance, I know that if Mike Bonin is doing a thing, more than likely David Rue is going to be backing him up on it. There are very few circumstances where Monica Rodriguez and Mike Bonin are going to agree on things. There are very frequent circumstances where Joe Buscaino and John Lee are going to agree on all sorts of things. Same thing with Monica Rodriguez. Let's lump all three of them together. They are the most pro-cop of all of the city council members. Joe Buscaino was a cop. John Lee's former boss, who is has pled guilty to corruption, also was a former cop. And John Lee is supported by more cops than I think any other council member, except maybe Monica Rodriguez, who is she sits on the the committee that deals with the LAPD more than any other. So the Public Safety Committee, which the LAPD does not make us safe. It's the community that makes us safe, as Melina would tell you, especially after what happened to her last week, thanks to the assholes that decided to SWAT her. But yeah, let me go ahead and try if anybody is still here. I can't tell how many people are watching. Let me see if I can pull this up on Twitch and see how many viewers I even have. Do I have people watching this? Yeah. Oh, shit. No, do not make audio. I've got 7 of you guys. Awesome. Thank you for sticking with me for so long. Let me go ahead and do a couple of things real quick here to make it so I can pull this agenda up and make it more. Yeah, hi, Alex. I see you. Make it more accessible. I did not finish getting these things set up. I think it's this one. Is it this one? Yeah, close enough. Let's pop this over here. And let's actually do this in a new window like this. And let me switch this over really quick. I apologize. I'm clicking on things. You can't tell I'm clicking on things, but I'm clicking on them. There we go. I'm going to pull this over here. Make sure that it's big and as legible as possible. Yeah, there we go. That'll work. All right. Bear with me. Clicky, clicky. Turn off the presentation. Yeah. Voila. All right. Look at that. We've got an agenda. So this is the city council agenda for tomorrow. You can see, I can actually scroll through it now instead of it being a static image. This is much more useful. As I said, the executive order 29-20, I didn't say that out loud before, but this is the order that allowed for the executive rules to come in, the executive order that created the state of emergency for them to have special rules and not follow all of their normal rules. You can get it on channel 35 on your TV, or you can tune in through the websites. See, like I said, you can call in to this number. I don't know if this actually works. I think I tried calling it before when they were having lots of technical difficulties. I don't know that it necessarily works, but here is the information that I copy and paste into my live tweets every single time, just in case they have changed what the meeting ID is going to be. I feel like this is the same meeting ID they've had for a little while now, but whatever. You are able to submit written comments to lacouncilcomment.com. You are also able to, when you find something, so these are all the rules. Read through them sometime. It's fun. The way that the meeting works out, so they do the roll call at the top, they do the approval of the minutes. This all happens in about 60 seconds before they start going into introducing new motions that are going to be, or rather holding items special. Sometimes at this part of the meeting, they will also do the vote on any items that have been that have had their public hearing requirement met. That seems to be the way that NURI is doing things these days, because if they do it, if they do the vote after public comment, then sometimes people will make public comment about things that are not necessarily open for public comment, and then they get into arguments, and Stefan Fabel likes to shout at people, but I think he's getting tired of shouting at people. I think we may be on the verge of breaking him here at some point. I know that Richie Sergenko from People City Council is doing his best to break Fabel. Him and Eric Previn, those two really get along. The multiple agenda item comment, this does not exist anymore as far as the process is concerned. The actual order of events here that they do, even when they did these council meetings in person back in the before times, multiple agenda item comment versus single agenda item comment versus just general public comment didn't ever really happen in any kind of meaningful order, and it was really up to the council president as to what the fuck the process was going to be that day. There were multiple times where I would sign up to give like one comment on one item in general public comment, and then like be waiting 45 minutes to an hour before getting to speak. And you never knew when it was, because sometimes they did. Everyone who would list that they want to comment on all of the items would get up and they would get to talk for 3 minutes on those items plus 1 minute of general public comment. You get 1 minute per item that you list with a maximum of 3 minutes. So if you ask to speak on 3 items, you get the same amount of time if you ask to speak on all the items. And sometimes there are 50, 60, 90 items on the agenda. Very rarely are there 90 items. That I've only really seen on the days right before they're going on a vacation and they're trying to cram everything through at the last minute, because they, just like me, love to procrastinate on things that they really should be doing ahead of time. But to be fair, I'm not getting paid for this shit, and they're getting paid $200,000 a year. Good times. Public testimony of non-agenda items. This typically doesn't happen. It's not a normal part of the meetings. You only really see that for, actually, I don't even know what you would see that for. They do the city does act as an arbitrator on decisions that are coming from, what was the one that they just did? They just had a decision about making approving a variance out of the Planning and Land Use Committee that was being appealed on CEQA grounds, CEQA being the California Environmental Quality Act. And the way that they were challenging it was that the proposed construction was going to impact local bat populations, but the people that were planning to do the construction had done their own study saying that there was not going to be any impact on protected bat populations. And so we got to have a lot of comment about bats, which was kind of fun, because each party got 5 minutes of testimony to give, and then like a minute of rebuttal and back and forth. This is very much the same structure of what happened with the Port of LA commissioners. They got 5 minutes per representative to speak from the National Resource Defense Commission, NRDC. I forget what the C stands for. But they and community organizations were suing the city and the Port Authority over the environmental impact review for the China shipping terminal. And the port was the other side of that argument, and they got to give a very lopsided presentation because, again, Buscaino was on their side, and they got to have the chief executive of the Port of Los Angeles give a presentation in a suit and tie on camera with a big boat in the background, big ship in the background, looking all smooth and professional with a slide deck that he got to show off, showing all of the fancy numbers relating to reductions in pollution, which is what this was all about. And then the people who were asking for the appeal of the environmental impact review were only allowed to speak on the phone. And they were each given 10 minutes because there were 4 of them, and 2 of them gave their 5 minutes to the other 2. So they each got, the 2 that spoke got 10 minutes apiece, whereas the chief executive got something like 10, 20 minutes-ish. I forget exactly, but he was given tons of opportunities to answer questions from the council, much more so than I don't think they actually asked any of the lawyers on the other side any questions, really. It was fun. It's a mess. The council gets to make these kinds of decisions. Anyway, going back on topic, I digress again, like I said I would. Fun thing with the agendas, and you can see it here. So it's ens.lacity.org. If you go there and you search for the agendas, you can find them that way. I would just say Google Los Angeles City Council agenda. And you'll find them. They're not that hard to find. You'll also find the links to the video if you don't want to click on the one that I provide in the live tweets every time. But you can actually look on these little guys. You can click on the hyperlink there, and that'll take you to the council file for that item. So, for instance, this one is the a lien that has been placed on a property, in this instance 4027 West 59th Place. a lien of $3896.26. And then you can see all of the documents that are around this $4,000. And you can see the original submission here from the report from the Department of Building and Safety. You can dig in, you can look into all this information. You can see their non-compliance code enforcement fee of $550, the late charge fee of $1,375, the accumulated interest at 1% per month for $760.68, and a title report fee of $53 for that grand total of $27.38. Of course, I think it's been added onto since then, but you can see all of this documentation about whatever rule it was that was broken. Let's see if we can figure that out really quick here. I can make this bigger so you can see better. Assessor's parcel number, pursuant to authority, invested code violations at this location, Department of Investigations, what did they do? Doesn't actually, well, it says it in here somewhere, I'm sure. Here we go. Oh God, I'm not going to dig through this. This was not a good idea to dig into this particular motion. I apologize. Point is, you can find all of the documents through this fun little LA City Clerk Connect system. It's the council file management system. I don't know why it rolls over. I'm guessing I am too zoomed in. Yep, there we go. Zoom out a little bit and then you can see the full thing. You can see the votes that happened. The last time that this was voted on was on the 19th of May this past year. You can see that everyone voted yes, aside from Jose Huizar, who was absent after being told to be absent, and Monica Rodriguez, who was actually absent. And then you can see the process. This started back in 2013. It has been ongoing up to 2020. A lot of these particular items here about these liens get continued week to week, and it happens for a while. So you can see these are all liens coming up to here. And then they've got a hearings of appeals. It's kind of fun. You can actually, let's see if is there one about, I don't think there's going to be one about the sidewalks. Maybe this one will have sidewalk information on it. It's kind of fun. You can actually look at the planning stuff in there. Ooh, holy. Look how many things are filed on this. Where's from Miracle Mile Sidewalk Maintenance District? Nice. It's back in 2011. What was filed? Let's look. There's a thing. Oh, this is a relatively boring document. A bunch of money. Yeah, let's not dig into this one too deep, like at all. It's kind of fun. Sometimes you can see, like, they give you drawings of being like, hey, look, we're going to change the sidewalk from being this curved thing to being this straighter thing. They also show you plots for where, alleys are going to be disappearing. They give you all these little planning drawings and stuff in there. But they also have lots of much more interesting reports. For instance, like there was a report coming out of the Controller's office not too long ago, I believe it was the Controller's office, relating to how much money the LAPD could save if they, had civilians performing a number of jobs that have been given over to sworn officers. For instance, there are a couple of sworn officers who are in charge of managing the social media accounts for the Los Angeles Police Department. And that means that we have law enforcement officers who are most likely going to have a gun on their hip, because I can only envision them in that way. Gun on their hip while their Twitter is under their fingertips, tweeting out about when the next time is that somebody else in their department is going to shoot someone, because that's what they tweet about. That and about arresting protesters in Grand Park for knocking down a George Washington statue, which there's no fucking reason why we should have a George Washington statue in Grand Park. There's no real reason for us to have a George Washington statue in the city of Los Angeles. But again, I digress. That being said, I don't know how much more detail I want to go into with all of these things about what goes on in a city council agenda, per se. This is where you dig in and you figure out what is going on. This is what I was saying earlier to call me MXT Zippy. Mixed Zippy, I'm guessing is how you pronounce that. This is where you find that information. This is where you dig in and you look into seeing what is going on. I know that there's what was the motion that was getting attention? I got a note from Sunrise about something. What did I get a note from Sunrise about? Go away. Which item number 21 is apparently about gas. Let's get on down to it. Item 21. Consideration of resolution Bon and Lee Koretz relative to establishing the city's position regarding a study on the feasibility of closing the Playa del Rey natural gas storage facility. That's a big fucking deal. Located at 8141 Gulana Avenue in Playa del Rey. Adopt the accompanying resolution to include in the city's 2019-2020 state legislative program support for a state study on the feasibility of closing the Playa del Rey natural gas storage facility. That's really dope. That explains why I was getting an email about Sunrise to highlight it. And so I'm highlighting it right now. I'm going to be highlighting it a whole hell of a lot tomorrow morning. This is great. Let's look at this motion. This is much more entertaining. So this was introduced back in February 11th, 2020. I see that there is a question. I'll get to that in just a moment. The resolution was, this is what the resolution was. Load. A whole bunch of whereas clauses. Therefore, be it resolved with the concurrence of the mayor that in the adoption of the resolution, the city of Los Angeles hereby include in its thing supporting a study on the feasibility of closing the plant. Hooray! Good work. And then you can see that the Rules Committee waived consideration of the item. City Clerk scheduled it for August 18th. They did that this past week after the Rules Committee waived their authority to do anything about it. 6 months after the fact, thank you very fucking much. Took them a long time to do anything about it. I don't think anything has changed in the resolution. Is it the same resolution? Yep. Oftentimes you'll see links to the same thing. It's really kind of annoying. But this is really dope. So this means that it has been through its committee by default because they waived their authority to do anything about it, and then they sent it back. And so then it's going to be voted on by the full council. And because the mover was Mike Bonin, he will be given preferential authority to pontificate about this motion before they vote on it, which what he'll do is when the council president tomorrow morning asks if any of the council members have any items that they want to be holding special for amendments or just to speak on, most likely Bonin will hold this one special to speak on it and express the urgency of it, probably give a bit of a shout out to Sunrise Movement. After, presumably there will be a lot of public comment coming from them and others. Now is a perfect opportunity to go ahead and click on the button up here that says new, and it will allow you to file a public comment on this motion. So you can say things like, we really need to close down this gas storage facility before it kills more people. I can just say this kind of shit because I can just say, it's from Chris. I guess they do need it from me. Well, let's give them my email address. Hey, look at this. You can all email me. groundgamela.org. You get up to 5,000 characters. You can also attach things to it. I've not tried to attach anything to it, but you can do all of that. You can say that you're not a robot. You can identify the chimneys because apparently they are using me to do their image recognition for CAPTCHA. So this is just going to be boop. Now it's in the public record. Hey, look at that. I submitted a public comment. It's that easy, folks. You too can submit public comment on any item that you want. You don't even have to wait in the line to talk about it. Not that they necessarily read any of these things, but that's a whole nother story. Now this will be, if you look in the records of this motion at some point in the future, there will be let's actually go ahead and do that. So you can see these communications from the public. You can click on that and you can look through and you can see that Wesley Chuang wrote that Yeah, natural gas as a fossil fuel in its supply chain is posing great risk to us and the planet, including emissions and explosions. We must find another way to power our economy right now. He was much more eloquent, Wesley, in making this statement than I was. I just said, don't kill people with gas. And I submitted mine, but Wesley submitted theirs earlier. You can also see that there were more comments submitted on the 16th, some of them longer than others. Time to shut it down. Da, 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 da. Don't need any more studies. We know that it's bad. Aliso Canyon. Yep. All sorts of stuff. So you can read. There's some very interesting comments that get in here sometimes. You can see sometimes that they leave very long comments. This one does not actually have a name, which is fun. All sorts of stuff. West LA Democratic Club weighing in here with Priska Glor. So anyway, this is like just kind of the things that you can dig through and find. You can submit your new comments here. You can look at what other people have been saying here. You can look at the various reports down in this section, and you can see what kind of votes have happened, if they have happened at all. In this instance, they have not. That's the basic gist of it. I've been doing this for 93 minutes. I think I'm going to call it a night here and promise to all of you dedicated people that I will do a part 2 for this. But the question from Call Me Mixed Zippy, is that the number you would cite if you make written public comment? When you make the written public comment, it actually already includes it. So it would be this number. But like I said, if you click on it and it goes into the council file, this is by far the easiest way to find things. If it loads, there we go. And you click on new, it will automatically populate that for you. It will also, you can share it with all your friends by copying the hyperlink up here, the URL, and just send that out, and that will automatically pre-populate it. Let's see, if I just change this to S23, hey, look at that, it pre-populates it there. So there you go. You can send it to all your friends for whichever comment item you want it to be, preferably the correct one. So don't manually change it, but there it is. That's how it works. So you can just take this URL, click on it, put it in a Google Doc with a bunch of information that people can then copy and paste, or just distribute it to their friends. You can tweet about it, all that jazz, and encourage people to make comments. That's an easy way to do so. Again, sadly, it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's actually going to read the damn things. This is one of those problems between the city government versus the county government. The county government is much better about this because in the county government, you don't just get what's the thing, what's your name and your email, and then what's your comment. You get to say support or oppose or neither, which then makes things really easy because you can just not put anything in there and just say, I oppose this, and just send it off. Or you can say, I support this, and just send it off. And that actually means that the county is able to then take a tabulation of what they have received in public comment all the way up until like the night before they're holding their hearing. Which is why when they had a motion before them about studying the feasibility of shutting down Men's Central Jail, that motion was brought forward, and it was a very contentious motion because, of course, it was a contentious motion. It was about shutting down a very large portion of the carceral punishment system here in the city of in the county rather of Los Angeles, and the sheriff's department got all uppity about it being a risk to jobs, union jobs for SEIU and others who work within the department and work within the facilities. So they rallied the troops, as it were. They got a bunch of union folks as well as a bunch of former cops and or very much cop sympathizers. In fact, they had a couple of people from the ALADS, which is the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs. I think they actually had the president of ALADS get on the phone and call in and give a public comment and sound like an idiot on the phone, talking about how shutting down Men's Central Jail was going to be a huge problem. And it was really disheartening to hear during the 45 minutes or an hour of public comment after comment after comment after comment of people who were opposing the shutting down of that jail. However, once the comment period was finished, and they probably only got like 30, maybe 40 comments through that process, I believe it was Supervisor Solis who then cited the tabulation from the public comment, the digital public comment forms. And, she pointed out that there was some quite vociferous opposition to the motion during the verbal public comment period, but when you looked at the written public comments, it was thousands and thousands of comments that had been submitted in support of shutting down the jails, and only 20 that had been submitted written comments in advance in opposition to shutting down the jails. And that makes some pretty damning testimony that the people who are, so shook about getting having the jails closed down, having this particular jail closed down, or not even closed down, but having the study started to look into the process of closing the jail down within a year. Again, nothing happens that quickly in any of these levels of municipal government. But the people who got all angry about this process even happening couldn't be fucking bothered to submit written comments in advance of the hearing. And as a result, were vastly outnumbered by people who had submitted comments in support of it. So it's a very powerful tool. It's fantastic for the county, less fantastic for the city, but people sometimes do look at it. And I've actually seen a couple of council members actually read from the public comment forms that have been submitted. Like they'll pull out quotes and use those during their privileged speaking time on an item. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes. And it's another avenue because they've really been curtailing their access as a member of the public to participate in these meetings. Like I said, they've pretty much shut it down to just 30 minutes these days, and it sucks. And that unfortunately is well within the purview of Nury Martinez to decide. And if she decides that we only get 30 minutes of public comment, we only get 30 minutes of public comment. They do need to open up the comment again whenever things are significantly amended, if they get amended after the public comment period has already happened, because they've done that before. They've committed multiple Brown Act violations in the last month, but no one seems to give a shit about it. Eric Previn has definitely filed, or said that he was filing complaints about these things. I filed a Brown Act complaint about the fact that they did not let us comment on Jose Huizar when they were removing him. They opened up the public comment for, I think it was less than 30 seconds. When we called in, we were told that the meeting had already been closed, had already happened, and it was over. And before anybody realized what was going on, they're like, well, nobody wants to give any public comment because, we definitely don't want to give any public comment about the fact that we have one of the most corrupt city council members in the history of Los Angeles, allegedly corrupt, pardon me, members of the city council in the history of Los Angeles, sitting here, supposed to be representing us, and you think that we don't want to say anything about it? Fuck you. We absolutely want to be saying things about it, and you're just denying us that authority. So I submitted a Brown Act complaint because they didn't do that, and of course they never actually responded to me, so I don't know what the fuck to do. I'm going to hit up the ACLU and see what I can do. Anyway, thank you very much for tuning in if you are still listening. I believe there are a few of you that still are. I promise there will be a part 2, and I really hope to be able to take any questions from you. If you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and send them to me. It's just so super easy. It's, as I've already shown on the stream, chris.roth@groundgamela.org. Not hard to find me, or you can hit me up on Twitter at Christopher Roth. You can also just tweet at us at GroundGameLA. I'm going to be on here tomorrow morning with a bright red background with the Knock logo and a ticker and all the things, live tweeting another city council meeting for Knock.la. Tune in and join me. It'll be fun. We're going to get loose with it. I'm just going to be drinking a shitload of coffee and getting mad at Mitch O'Farrell for something, I'm sure. Or Paul Koretz, or Paul Krikorian, or Joe Buscaino, or David Rue, or frankly any of them, because they all do terrible things from time to time. With the exception of sometimes Mike Bonin, but he still fucks up sometimes. He just fucks up the least. So, hey, whatever. Here we are. It's now 8:40. I've gone so far beyond the time that I was supposed to be doing this, but whatever. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. Yes, I will get mad at you, Eric, if you change the fucking ticker on me again, you asshole. Don't hide it when I'm in the middle of the stream, damn it. All right. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. I promise round 2, and I will probably be more on topic. I will follow a stricter agenda. And I honestly think, oh, that's right. It was Caroline. It was not Eric. I apologize. I am so sorry, Eric. I did not mean to speak poorly of you. It was Caroline who decided to just hide my damn ticker in the middle of the stream. Anyway, I don't know when we'll do this. Maybe I'll do this next week on Monday. I'm not entirely sure. I'll try to get Rob Kwan on here so we can do a 2-person tag team and maybe answer some more of your questions. And hopefully we'll find a great way for people to be able to participate a little bit more directly. I don't know if I'm just talking too fast or if you guys just like to listen to me tell stories, but there weren't that many questions. Think about questions, and I would love to answer them because it is great for people like Annie to ask me questions that I don't know answers to, and then I have to try to figure it all out on the fly. Good times. Hopefully having Rob on here will be helpful for that because he is much, much more knowledgeable about this topic than I am. I've really kind of all figured this all out in just the last couple of years. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And I didn't really get deep dive into it until quarantine, when I forced myself to sit down and watch all of these meetings happening live. And call me Mixed Zippy. You're not actually far off. I started doing this pretty frequently because originally it was just we were on the K-Town for All Discord, literally playing city council bingo of what's going to happen. Is David Rue going to take credit for something Mike Bonin did? Is Paul Koretz going to say something accidentally racist? Accidentally. Is Joe Buscaino going to be showing up in a fucking cop uniform? These were all things that were happening on a regular basis at the beginning of the fucking quarantine. And it turned into a bit of a spectacle, and then I decided to just turn it into something hopefully more useful than just a spectacle where we laugh and get mad. And I hopefully laugh and get mad and also spread information. So tune in for the live tweets. I'm talking too much. I'm tired. I'll be back again soon. I'll be back here tomorrow morning. Back here all the time. Bye.